Definitions. All right, perfect. I think you got the recording and going. So if you can go to the next slide, please. We can skip this. So as I mentioned, prior slide. Yeah, so the system is now approved in the US. We recently got our FDA clearance in January of this year. We were previously approved in Australia. We have already successfully performed surgical cases using the system in both Australia and India and gotten some very positive feedback, as well as we continue to develop a wide range of clinical data that demonstrates reproducible accuracy and applicability of the system on a wide range of patient profiles. There's strong IP already in place with 3 patent families granted in most major markets like US, EU, and Australia. And there's a 4th PCT that's an advanced review that continues to extend and will extend our leadership in the space. We are starting with our first indication, which is for hip application using the anterior approach. It's the fastest growing segment in the market. It's already more than half of all surgeries are performed using this approach, and it's growing twice the rate of posterior approach. So the difference between these two approaches are in the anterior, the patient is lying on their back and the surgeon is coming from the front. And it's superior in terms of outcomes for patients. Historically, and older surgeons have performed posterior approach where the patient is lying on the side and the surgeon is coming from the back. That second indication is in development, and we have certainly aspirations. The technology has potential to go beyond hips into knees and shoulders. We are currently raising a minimum of 3.5, and this is slightly outdated. So it should be, a minimum of $5 million to essentially commercialize both in US and Australia, as well as support a post-market study to drive clinical adoption. And then finally also support some additional features and the posterior indication development. Just from a valuation perspective, the company is looking for a pre-money valuation of $30 million Australian dollars. Prior to this round, or last round, we had a post of $22 million, but since then we have received FDA clearance as well as performed surgical cases in human surgical cases. So if you can go to the next slide, please. The problem we are trying to solve here is essentially most surgeons do not use any technology when they're placing the acetabular cup or the prosthesis into the hip socket. And they simply freehand. So if you have seen videos of hip surgery, essentially the surgeons are creating access, and based on the different heuristics, or in some cases using technology like imaging, they are angling the cup angles based on that heuristic and simply hammering it in. And when you hammer it in with that force, there's a lot of data that suggests that more than half the time, the surgeons are actually missing target angles substantially, which can lead to post-surgery complications. For example, you see here dislocation where the entire prosthesis can come off, or imagine a car being driven with the wheels off angle. Essentially, the wheel will come off at some point, and that's where you have liner wear and tear, and you have cup failures. Just in US alone, to fix these issues, you need to do revision surgeries. And just in US alone, it costs $3 billion to the health system to fix this. Obviously, globally, this is a growing and a major problem. So if you can go to the next slide, please. And while there are existing technologies like robotics and other navigation technologies, they're not widely adapted. So in the updated deck, I've shown data that shows that less than 10% of all hip surgeries are being performed using any technology. Most of the hype around is actually around knees in terms of usage of robotics. And the reason why these technologies have not taken off is really a combination of 2 things. One, they all use metallic pins that are inserted into the human pelvis. And then different, depending on technologies, optical cameras or imaging, different pieces are attached. And there's a complicated process of then using that technology for cup placement, which can lead to patient complications. So localized infection, bursitis, soft tissue injury. But more importantly, and probably equally importantly, because of that complexity, it slows the surgeon down. So a typical hip surgery these days takes about an hour. Most of these technologies are adding anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes to that procedure. So a high volume surgeon really hates being slowed down. Even middle volume surgeons are not liking it, and which is a major reason why these technologies have not been adopted. So if you can go to the next slide, please. Let me check. Okay, so I still cannot share, right? Okay, if we can click this video.
Did you want us to start the video, sorry?
Yeah, I would just wanted to quickly, if you can turn the volume off, I'll just give a sense of, of how the product works. So.
Go for it.
Okay, perfect. So essentially the technology really has three components. One set of components is this orthopedic brace, which looks like a tripod. And basically, so this is a longer version of the video. I apologize. In my deck, I have a shorter version, but I can't share that now. So essentially, this is the second component. You see that monitor, it's a handheld monitor. This is the monitor where the surgeon is now inputting the target angles before the start of surgery. The tripod looking brace can be assembled very easily, so it's very easy to assemble. And I'm going to quickly skip through this. If we can forward the video a little bit, if you don't mind. Just pause here if you can. All right, so just that piece, because I'll just make it easy for the audience to understand. Essentially, the monitor along with that tripod looking brace together are placed on the patient, and all the surgeon has to do is press OK, and the system is capturing the patient's anatomical plane as a reference plane. So think about landing a plane. You need to have an idea of where the runway is. So all this is doing is you place the brace along with the monitor on the patient for 10 to 20 seconds, press OK, and capture that zero reference plane. And then the monitor is removed and put on this standard instrument that you see. It's called an impactor. You see the cup at the end. That is what is normally used by these surgeons, and the surgeon is simply hammering it in. All we do is attach this monitor, and when you change the angle of the impactor, it gives you a sense of how it's aligned with the target. And when it's aligned, it lights up just the way it's shown on the left hand on the screen, and the surgeon simply hammers it in. So it's essentially providing real-time guidance to the surgeon during impaction. And this is, the simplicity of the system. So I think we can skip the rest of the video in the interest of time. And if you can go back
to the presentation now.
Yeah. If you can go back to that, please. So what you see is, a very simple system. So very small footprint and easy to use. We are targeting a huge market, and it's a growing market because of aging demographics. Just the hip market alone is $2 billion or more based on our pricing. So this is direct addressable market. And we have aspirations to go beyond hips into other markets, which can expand the target market substantially. If you can go to the next slide, please. As I mentioned, we have done surgical cases. These are just examples of surgeons who have performed these surgeries, both in India and Australia. Very consistent feedback. It's extremely efficient, quick, and patient-friendly. One of these surgeons, for example, Dr. Krishna Kiran on the bottom left, is a high-volume surgeon, and one of his comments was, if you slow me down, you are out. And we were happy to observe that, after a couple of cases, he was like, nope, this is straightforward. And I can use this in my hospital very easily, and you haven't slowed me down. So this is, we believe, a major differentiator for the product. If you can go to the next slide, please. We have collected a lot of data over the course of development on a wide range of patient population, low BMI to high BMI, highly obese patients, on a wide range of hist-to-weight ratio. And essentially, the system works well on these wide range of patient profiles, and its accuracy level is very comparable to other competitive systems out in the market. But as I mentioned, this is table stakes. what differentiates us is ease of use, speed, and cost effectiveness. So if you can get to the next slide, please. This is speaking to the ease of use and footprint. What you see on the bottom left is robotics. Now, if you ask a random surgeon, or if you follow the market, there's a lot of hype about robotics. But if you see here just a picture of Mako, one of the most popular robotic systems, it's a huge footprint. It takes half the OR size. It has a long 2-hour setup time. It requires dedicated training. There's a 6-month-long certification process for the surgeon. And very importantly, at least in the US, the hospital has to pay $100,000 on an average to have a dedicated sales specialist that can operate the Mako system and support the surgeon. As you move along, there are systems with lesser footprint, but they all use metallic pins. They all add time, and there's significant hardware which requires upfront capital investment. So Gyder is a major step change because it's pinless, it's imageless, but you see the footprint is very minimal. We also made it very flexible. We are providing surgeons the choice to choose their implant. So we are not forcing them to really go with only specific implants. So it's a very open platform. If you can go to the next slide, please. And this, we believe, is the biggest seller. We demonstrated our product, for example, at American Association of Orthopedic Surgeons meeting. Every surgeon who came by was interested because it was pinless, non-invasive. But what they were truly blown away was how fast this is. So it barely takes 2 minutes to use the device in the OR. So this is a major step change compared to other competitive system performance. If you can go to the next slide, please. And just from a cost perspective, our standard model is going to be razor blade. So we can place the equipment that you saw. The monitor is reusable 400 times. The rest of the equipment is stainless steel, can be re-sterilized for every procedure. Our plan is to place this at no cost. And because of our design-driven COGS advantage, we can actually recover the cost of that placement in 10 to 15 surgeries. So as long as the surgeon is using it, we can recover this very quickly. And our strategy is to price a single-use pre-sterilized kit that we'll be charging as an ASP of $1,000, Australian $1,000, but obviously it will vary by customer and market. And with that, very importantly, we can hit 80% gross margins. I used to sit on J&J's pricing committee. I have visibility, used to have visibility to all competitive pricing as well as costs across all competitive systems. And I can honestly say the vast majority of companies and their technologies are not really making money, nowhere close to these kind of gross margins, but at these price points. They are either forced to sell very expensive at a much higher price point, which is part of the reason why they are not being adopted, or they're selling it at a lower price point, but they are asking for commitments on the implant side. That strategy works for 10 to 15% of the market, where you can get 4 or 5 surgeons to align to use our technology, but it's not possible to win with that approach beyond that top 15 to 20% of the market. This is where we believe we are. This makes us a very attractive acquisition target in the future because of our high gross margins. So if you can go to the next slide, please. Just to summarize from a product perspective, again, we can place it at no cost compared to other systems where you need to put in at least $100K to $1 million for a robotic system. Upfront capital costs, we can bypass the capital purchasing committee. We can fast track the selling process. Very importantly, from a learning perspective, we can do on-site training. For example, I've trained surgeons. It took about 1 to 2 hours, 1 to 2 hours of OR staff training, and they are up and running using the system the next day. This is a massive advantage, again, both from a training capital requirements and the time to scale in the marketplace. We have a major advantage compared to competition. So if you can, just to summarize, again, we are easy to use, cost effective, super fast, and a very quick learning curve. If you can go to the next slide, please. This is just an example of Peter Smitham from Adelaide, one of our lead surgeons, presenting our system at the American Association of Orthopedic Surgeons, where 10,000 surgeons come in. We were one of the companies selected as one of the most innovative technologies back in a couple of years ago. If you can go to the next slide, please. As I mentioned, our first indication that is approved is for the anterior approach. It is the fastest growing segment, with more than half of all US procedures being done using that approach. In Australia, it's about 30% of procedures, and it's growing twice the rate of posterior. Market projections suggest that by the end of this decade, this will be pretty much the dominant 70 to 80% of all procedures will be done using this approach. And then we are also targeting outpatient centers. So one of the biggest trends in the US is are these patients, hip patients are being done or are being operated upon in an outpatient center, and they are being sent back this home the same day. This is the fastest growing segment. It's growing at 25% clip. About 15% of the market right now is right now in outpatient, and almost every surgeon worth their salt is moving their practice and building these outpatient centers. Again, these outpatient centers are looking at taking the simplest patients, the less risky patients, and doing as much high volume as possible. So it's a factory, and they're looking for technology that can be operated and used very fast. And this is where our time advantage of 1 to 2 minutes operating time can be a major advantage. If you can go to the next slide, please. Just before I speak to the team, from a commercial perspective, we are now engaged with 3 different large distributors. Distributor 1 covers 5 states in the northwest of US. Does $150 million US dollars in implant sales. We are looking to do our first cases using that distributor with Dr. Nicholas in Salt Lake City in around May. There's a second distributor in Florida, again, a high volume state, that is looking to do in 3 outpatient centers, already identified 5 surgeons, and they're ready and primed to start doing cases. So we're looking somewhere, again, May end, early June to start doing cases there. There's a third distributor in DC that's already committing $500,000 US dollars in sales for year 1 and looking to do $2 million of sales in year 2. Just giving you a flavor of the kind of commercial traction we are getting, even though we have not spent a single marketing dollar yet. And so, just gives you a sense of the attractiveness of the product. From a team perspective, Bill Hill led product development before I came in. Lawrence represents Jagan, the Lieberman family, private family office, private family office, and is the chair. And Chris Wills is the CFO of Sonic. And as you know, obviously Chris is quite known as well as Lawrence in the Australian financial community. Both of these individuals and Jagan have been founding investors and have participated in every round. And Nick Pachuta is a surgeon, used to be VP of M&A at Johnson & Johnson across the globe for medical devices. Between Nick and I, we have access to more than 10 plus strategic acquirers in the orthopedic space. We have a very good understanding of what they're looking for, and we are marching towards that as one of the potential outcomes in terms of exit strategy. If you can go to the next slide, please. We continue to build the roster in terms of surgeons. I mentioned Dr. Nicholas. He's a Mayo Clinic fellow, a high-volume surgeon. He is going to be the first surgeon to use in the US. Dr. Amatullah is a great example, who used to be a hip robotic user, has given up on robotics because it adds 30 minutes. It's very expensive. And according to him, it's not adding any value. He saw our device and he said, why would I use robotics? You guys are pretty much doing the most important parts that we need help with. We already have manufacturing in place in Australia, and we are ready to commercialize. If you can go to the next slide, please. Sorry, just before that, Dennis Gassel, who's shown on that previous slide, used to be the VP of Sales and Marketing for Diffuse Synthes, $2.5 billion of joint reconstruction business. He just joined Gyder as Chief Commercial Officer last month. So again, a good testament of the quality of people as well as good validation about the potential of this tech. If you can go to the next slide, please. Prior to this round, we have raised about $9 million, of which approximately Close to 2 is non-dilutive funding from federal and Victorian government grants. We've been very capital efficient. With that 9 million, we have not only developed our first indication, but we have received now approvals in 2 major markets. The posterior indication, it's an advanced prototype, and we anticipate about 12 more months of development before we are ready to put it in human use. And then this round, we're looking to raise 5 million and north of that, which will support the next 18 months of commercialization, both in US and Australia, more focus on the US, as well as advance our posterior indication. And our goal is to then submit for Japan in late this year or early next year, which will position us for future growth in Japan and eventually into EU. We anticipate, if you can go to the next slide. Again, there's a huge pipeline of additional indications which can provide us access to a greater market, but also has the potential to raise our ASP from where it stands today. If you can go to the next slide, please. Just to paint a picture here, we are looking at a standard controlled launch in year 1. So, and again, as I mentioned, between just these 3 distributors that I mentioned in the US, we are well positioned to move forward and execute on this plan and potentially exceed our year 1 projections. The second thing is we are looking at, with our high gross margins and relatively low amount of investment required to scale this product and commercialize, we are looking to be EBITDA positive on a quarterly basis in Q4 of FY 2027 and on an annual basis in FY 28. This includes additional funding for R&D of our next set of indications. If we exclude R&D, we will need around $8 to $10 million to be profitable. But we are looking to raise a combination of this round plus a future $15 million round. So a total of $20 million gets us to profitability, as well as funds additional R&D, which gives us access to additional growth. If you can go to the next slide, please. And this is simply a use of funds. Most of that 3.5 is targeted towards commercialization, including commercial team expansion, inventory build, and all the marketing that we require in the next 18 months. And about $1.5 million will be towards additional indications and feature development for our next product. Okay, if you can go to the next slide, please. So just to close it out, this is a very attractive opportunity. We have a large TAM. It's growing because of aging demographics and underpinned by long macro trends. We are de-risked from a regulatory perspective in major markets now that we have FDA clearance. There's a clear competitive advantage and, very importantly, strong unit economics with 80% gross margins targeted. And very quick to markets now. We are looking to enter Japan and then eventually EU. Patent protected. We have a strong management team, and we are looking to expand that team even further. And just to close it out, I think there are significant value accretion milestones in the next 12 to 18 months. We'll be commercializing in the US. We'll be advancing our next indication, which expands the accessible market and positions us for our second product. As well as we are conducting right now, we are kicking off a post-market study in Adelaide. Actually, later this month, we already have ethics approval and everything. And then we anticipate a couple of more publications to come out. So as we continue to publish this evidence, we'll continue to drive that clinical adoption. So with that, thank you for the opportunity, and I'm open to questions.
Appreciate that, Sujin. Sorry for the disruption at the start. Are there any questions online? If you just want to take yourself off mute and go for it, we'll have a couple of minutes for that.
Yeah, Brendan, Phil Lucas here. I've got a couple of questions. So to be clear, you buy a piece of hardware that does the angle measurements, but you also buy a surgical kit for each procedure you do. Is that right? That gets sterilized. So if I'm a surgeon who does 4 hips in a day, I'd buy 4 of those that get sterilized in between cases. Is that right?
So what you see in this picture is are two things, right? One is that tripod-looking brace where the surgeon has his hands on. That is re-sterilizable, autoclavable. We believe that for a high-volume surgeon who's doing, let's say, 8 cases a day, 2 of these or 3 of these are sufficient, and they can keep on recycling this. And for mid to low volume, obviously you don't need that many. The monitor that you're seeing is actually comes in as non-sterilized. It is transferred from a non-sterile to sterile zone using a plastic specially designed clamshell that is patent protected because it can withstand and isolate the monitor from impact force. That clamshell comes in as part of the single-use kit. So it comes in pre-sterilized along with 2 or 3 other components that are single-use. And that's what gets sold as, on a per procedure basis. But the monitor can be reused. All it needs to be done is transferred from non-sterile to sterile using that clamshell.
Right.
And because of
Yeah,
that,
that's right. That explains it. Yep.
yeah,
Have you got time for some other questions? So you said no imaging is required. The target angle on that acetabulum doesn't require imaging. It's just they want the angle, or they've used imaging to work out what angle they want that in.
So every surgeon has a different philosophy in terms of what angles they want to target. There are surgeons who do extensive preoperative planning. They may use preoperative imaging for planning purposes or to assess the patient, right, from an MRI or CT perspective. But you don't need to use that CT or X-ray intraoperative fluoro for our product. So no imaging required for the use of navigation, just to be clear.
Yeah, that's what you're saying.
Once they target angles, so whatever angle they want to choose for that patient based on their philosophy, all they have to do is input the target angle. And I apologize, that video I had to skip because again, there's a shorter form of the video which would have explained it more clearly. But it's agnostic to surgeons' preference, right? Philosophy.
Right. Okay.
Anyone else?
Yeah, sorry. Hi, it's Damien here. Thanks for the presentation. It's great. Just a couple of questions. Did you say the product is manufactured in Australia?
That's correct, David.
And then it seems like the major market opportunity for you guys is in the US.
That's correct. So just in US alone, just to give you a sense, there are about 700,000 procedures done annually. In Australia, there are 50,000 procedures done annually. So that's one difference in terms of volumes. But the pricing in the US is, at least twice of what we can get in Australia. So yes, from that perspective, US is the largest and most attractive market for us. If you're looking at tariff impact, but go ahead, Damon, if
Yes, I suppose my main question, this might be a naive question, is just with everything going on in the US, are there any risks that you see coming? I know it's hard to say, but is there anything I don't really fully understand this space, but in the medical area, can you see anything coming from the Trump government that could be a problem for you guys?
It's interesting, last time Trump did the tariffs in his first term, medical devices were exempt. This time he has gone across the board. I do anticipate, Damien, the likely outcome is, once things kind of settle down, AdvoMed and other industry associations would be able to negotiate a carve out or lesser tariff impact. But let's assume even a worst case scenario that, Australia gets hit by, right now it's 10%, but let's say 20% scenario. I'm just really painting the worst case scenario. Even at low production volumes in Australia, we are at 70% gross margins. As we scale, we are going to be achieving, without any changes to our design or any other tweaks, we are looking at 8% gross margins. That's number one. And so there are multiple levers beyond that, including some design change and optimization of inventory and what we ship and all that, that can help us maintain close to 80, between 70 to 80% gross margins, frankly. So I am not worried per se. And I don't anticipate any medical device or pharma to be banned like chips, for example, right? We don't anticipate that, at least with Australia.
Okay. And so the route to market for the US is through other distribution partners that you showed in the presentation?
Yeah, so we are looking at a hybrid model eventually. We are starting with some key distributors. So between Dennis Castle, who I mentioned, right, came from J&J, and I, we have strong historical relationships and know which distributor is strong and which market. So we are looking at targeting those distributors systematically. And then in certain markets, we anticipate that either we are not going to get the right partner or we're not going to get the right focus. And so we will be supplementing that with our direct sales force. And we anticipate probably about 5 people, on a direct basis in certain select markets. But that we anticipate more like a 2026 event once we have a full picture of how the distributor landscape shakes out for us.
And this again may be a naive question. I mean, obviously, most of the people who sit on the board or the leadership team come from big medical companies that have a lot of power. Obviously, this is a Australian startup. What level of leverage or incentives have to be put in place to actually get this thing moving?
Yeah, it's a great point, and I should emphasize that most very specifically around this space. And by the way, this is not my first foray into startups. I used to work at another startup called Rome Robotics. It's in exoskeleton space. I worked at Affymetrix, which was a pioneer for really the first company to commercialize large-scale gene sequencing. So I have startup experience, but your point is extremely valid. In our space, most major players are actually struggling to go beyond that 15 to 20% of marketplace, the Stanfords of the world. And the reason for that is they are not able to price this appropriately. That's number one. So the outpatient centers, outside of a couple of big names, they're not able to really compete because of price. And so every surgeon I'm talking with, every ASC we know of, is very keen on trialing our product. 89% of surgeons we have surveyed, anterior surgeons, want to trial in their location. So very important for this market, it's the surgeon that is the primary driver, and then the economic buyer is a secondary driver. In both of these, we are favorably placed. That's number one. Number two, we certainly have to give a little bit more to distributors. So on an average, the industry average in our space, in orthopedics, for example, is 18 to 20% commission rates back to $1. We'll have to look at 25 to 30%. So a little bit more incentive on the distributor, make things easy, in terms of their experience, and a little bit more commission. And that's what we have already baked into our model. But as we scale, that goes away. We'll have more negotiating power. And the third is most of these large players are focused on the super high volume centers, right? Where you do thousands of cases. And there's a huge, I don't have the graph here in this deck, but there's a huge tail of mid to, let's say, low volume surgeons. So I'm talking about anywhere from 200 to 50 cases a year. That there's a huge target. That's really the bulk of the market that these guys are not targeting. And because, again, the economics doesn't work in their favor. That's the market we are going after. And so we believe those barriers are less, even though we are a startup.
Okay, great. Thank you. I apologize, I haven't got my camera on. It doesn't seem to allow me to do it for some reason. But thank you. That was excellent.
Well, thank you for the question.
Does that mean you need boots on the ground in the US for that smaller segment of the market?
No, it's a great question, and that's one of the things I was initially grappling with. But the reality is, because we are able to train on site in 1 to 2 hours, and our experience suggests that surgeons don't need, and surgeon and the OR staff don't need actual case coverage or actual sales force presence during the surgery. After 10 to 15 surgeries, you could have one single person support a much larger number of customers than typically what you would have experienced, let's say, with an implant, orthopedic implant, or a more complicated device, where you not only have to have extensive training, but more importantly, you need to support the majority of cases, surgical cases, in the OR. So a rep can only cover so many or support only so many surgeons. We don't have that limitation.
Right. Anyone else be okay with that? Okay, look, thank you everyone for dialing in, and Susie, thank you for the presentation. Apologies again about the mishap at the start. We will have this recorded in the circulator round and also a term sheet following this meeting for those that have dialed in and for a few that actually weren't able to attend today. So I'm sure that Susie will be open to hearing any questions should anyone have any after the presentations. Just send them through and I'm sure we can get that connected. So appreciate it. Thank you for your time, everyone. And yeah, have a good day.
Well, thank you for the
Thank you very
opportunity.
much. See ya.
Thank you
Bye.
all.